All right.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to this Techstrong learning experience brought to you by Precisely. My name is Cody, and I'm the host of Techstrong Learning, and we have an exciting presentation ahead. Before we begin, I do have just a couple of housekeeping notes to cover. Today's session is being recorded, so if you miss any of our discussion, perhaps you'd like to rewatch or share with a friend. The on-demand recording will be made available shortly after we conclude our live session today. Now, if you want to engage with us today, you can do so using a couple of options on the right side of your screen. The first tab I'll direct you to is the chat tab. So I'd like you to start warming that up for us right now. Let us know from where you are joining us or perhaps what role you play in your organization. If you want to send in any questions, you can do so using the Q&A tab, which is directly to the right of that chat tab. Now, if you navigate to the handout section, you will see a version of the slides that are available for download. So feel free to grab those if you'd like. And of course, before we close out, we are giving away 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. So be sure to stick around for the duration of our program today. So our topic is overcoming business challenges with automation of SAP processes. And I'm joined today by Andrew Hayden, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Precisely. Andrew, thank you so much for being here with me today. Do you want to go ahead and get this thing started?
Sure, Cody. Thanks. And yeah, I really appreciate being here. Hopefully I can qualify for one of those Amazon gift cards. I guess not. Anyway, I just want to welcome everybody here. Yeah, as Cody said, we're going to be talking about overcoming the challenges that we have with automating SAP processes. And I am Andrew Hayden. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager for our Automate products at Precisely. I've been with the company about 5 years. I've been in the technology space and dealing with automation, for well over 20, almost 25 years. So it's a subject I know well. It's something that's very close to my heart. And I think as we go through the presentation today, hopefully you get a better sense for how automation can help you in your business and really help drive success in some of those really difficult and challenging SAP processes that we all kind of face and go, I'm not sure how to make this better. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, first thing we're going to talk about is why automation. So why is automation this thing right now that is so hot in our minds and in our companies in the marketplace? We're going to talk about why an automation platform. We're very big believers at Precisely that an automation platform can help drive benefits much further than looking at just a point solution approach, really. And we'll talk more about that. We'll talk about automation and digital transformation. So where does automation really fit into that digital transformation process? And then what are some examples of the value of automation? What have some of our customers seen when they adopted automation for various SAP processes? We'll talk about some key takeaways. I'll tell you a little bit about Precisely, and then we'll take some questions at the end. So as Cody said, if you do have questions throughout, please put them in the Q&A box, and we will do our best to get to as many of them as we can by the end. Just know that if we don't get to all of your questions, I will get them, and somebody from Precisely, whether myself or someone else in the organization, will reach out to you with an answer. So let's talk a little bit more about automation and why automation. Excuse me. So automation right now seems to be it's kind of the hot, sexy thing within digital transformation. And there's a reason for this. And coming out of the pandemic, we all found out in 2020 how effective or ineffective our digital transformation had been to this point. We've spent 20 years or a couple of decades, digitizing our data and digitalizing some of our aspects of creating that data. And when the pandemic happened, all of a sudden we were put in a position where we had to pivot and change and move our businesses in ways that we had never anticipated. And we found out what the limitations were of our digital transformation efforts up to this point. So coming out of that, I think what we found is that there are really needs and wants that our companies have. And if we think about the needs that we've got, we really recognize coming out of the pandemic, we need to be more agile. If there is a disruption in the marketplace like we had in 2020, anything like that, we need to be able to pivot and change and move and make adjustments very, very quickly in order to maintain not only continuity in our business, but maintain momentum if we've got it. Automation is a really good way, and especially when you talk about, or when we look at platforms for automation and what they can do to help us make quick pivots and make quick changes. Automation is a really good way to gain that agility, or at least some of that agility that we need in our businesses. We also realize we need to go faster. The marketplace is constantly accelerating, and we recognize this, and being able to go faster in what we do in our business, make these processes move more quickly than they've moved before, can be absolutely critical for our competitive advantage these days. And while we need to be more agile, we need to go faster, we also need to improve the quality and integrity of our most important data. And if you're a company that runs on SAP, that data really is, it's your SAP master data as well as the functional and reference data that you use every day to run your business. So that's where we find that companies need to be able to make gains, and where automation really can have an impact across that. We're going to talk about that today. Excuse me. And then the other one is, what do we want to do? So we want to be able to optimize staff. We've spent, again, decades kind of figuring out what is the right size organization we need. And again, coming out of the pandemic, in some cases, our organizations are smaller, or they are less efficient because they're distributed. So we want to optimize our staff, and automation is a great way to do that. And we're going to show a couple of examples of how automation can help you gain efficiencies with the staff you have today, and what you can really be able to do with the current people you have. We want to reach ROI faster. One of the great criticisms early on of automation was it was really difficult to measure and understand, how much is it costing us? How long is it actually taking to make our money back? Because there is an ongoing cost often to automation. But if that cost is higher than the value, you're never going to reach ROI. But understanding how you measure that value of the automation is something that I think we've always found challenging. And as I go through the examples at the end, we'll show you 3 different ways that companies found to really measure the value that automation gave to them. And ultimately, we want to realize this digital transformation dream. I mean, I think all of us for a very long time have had this idea that automation or digital transformation is going to change our business completely. And the reality of it is, what it does is it enhances the way we do business and can give us massive benefits in terms of scale and speed and efficiency and everything else. And we just always feel like we're not there. And part of it goes back to this ability to be able to be agile and go faster and keep up with the pace of change. So realizing that digital transformation dream really is one of those things that we desperately want to be able to do. And when we look at what's happening in automation, to accelerate the digital transformation effort, and when we talk about digital transformation, I think the key thing to realize here is we're in many cases talking about how do we optimize these processes around the data that we use, because ultimately data has become that fuel for decision making in our organizations. And we're investing a massive amount of money in digital transformation. So Gartner estimates that by 2026, we'll be spending over $1 trillion on what they call hyperautomation. And hyperautomation, in a nutshell, is the ability to automate as many processes across your organization as quickly as possible. And there's a number of ways to do it. And we recently did another webinar at Precisely just specifically around hyperautomation and what it is. So if you're interested in more, you can go check that out. But hyperautomation really is kind of this massive expansion of automation across our organizations. And it's growing pretty quickly. It's growing at about 12% a year. So that's accelerating. Coming out of the pandemic, KPMG found that about 80% of CEOs are accelerating their digital transformation efforts. We realized again that we've just gotten to a certain point, and digital transformation wasn't all we thought it was going to be. And so now we're looking at how do we catch up. Automation is a very big part of that acceleration, and hyperautomation and that concept of hyperautomation is a big part of that. In that same study, KPMG found that about 2/3 of CEOs are looking to spend more money on technology than they are on people. And one of the key things about that to understand is it used to be automation was replacing people, but we're not there anymore. Now what CEOs are looking for, and CIOs and CTOs and every kind of CXO you can find, is they're looking for technology that's going to make their current people more efficient and more effective. They want to give those people back time to do more value-added work. They want to eliminate manual processes, but they aren't necessarily looking to eliminate people, because let's be honest, we've been cutting our staffs for years. And then on the SAP specific side of it, ASUG, or the American SAP User Group, found in 2021, some research they did, less than half of SAP run organizations are leveraging automation in a meaningful way. So there's a huge opportunity here for growth and implementation of automation within the SAP ecosystem. And there's a couple of reasons for this. One is just purely the complexity of SAP. And we're going to talk through and kind of demonstrate why some of these processes are so difficult to automate within SAP. But one thing you have to keep in mind as you go through thinking about automation is there is this distinct interdependence of process and data. And for a very long time, in a lot of the initial automation efforts, we were looking purely at process. We're going to drive efficiency into our process. And so what we ended up doing was we would automate a process without looking at the data that process was creating and managing. And if that process created and managed a lot of bad data, by automating it and making it more efficient, what you ended up doing was generating a lot of bad data quickly. And that's highly counterproductive. So what we look at, and one of the things we always take into consideration, is this interdependence of process and data. You can't do a process improvement initiative without looking at that data that's being created and managed by the process. At the same time, if you're doing a data quality initiative and you've got a lot of problems with bad data in, whether it's your SAP system or your databases or your data lake or wherever it is, you really need to look at the processes that you are using to create and manage that data, because just doing data quality, if you're not looking at the processes, means you're going to always do data quality initiatives because you're going to continue to generate bad data. So keep in mind that interdependence of process and data is absolutely critical to your organization. Now, one of the things we know with the processes we talk about is there's a lot of common challenges that you have, especially in SAP. And I'm going to talk about purely the upstream challenges. So the challenges to actually create a product, or mostly a product, I would say services at this point, because downstream you can often have a lot of differences in terms of your sales organization, what kind of distribution you do, who your customers are, your customer base is, are you B2B or are you B2C, all kinds of problems there. But a lot of the automation benefits we're going to talk about apply downstream as well. But on the upstream side, you've got a lot of very common challenges, whether you're making a soft drink, as we see here, or an automobile, because you've got complex material environment, especially in SAP, for raw and semi-finished goods, and that goes along with multiple vendors and suppliers, and sometimes that interdependence again of data across material and vendor, because you may have the same material from multiple vendors, or you may have one vendor giving you multiple materials. And the material environment within SAP can be massively complex, and the data objects that you can have. I mean, I've seen materials with literally hundreds of data objects associated with them. And the complex processes that we'll talk about in a couple of minutes. One other issue we see consistently is manual data management with spreadsheets. 451 Research recently did a study, and they found that well over 60% of companies do the majority of their data creation and management in Excel or another spreadsheet. I think Google Sheets is probably the most prevalent one, but just assume it's Excel. The vast majority of them are Excel. And there's a challenge around anything you do with spreadsheets, and that is that often your processes are ungoverned or poorly governed at best. You're dealing with a lot of manual data entry. You're dealing with a lot of issues that happen around, you go through a review and approval process, and at the end of that process, you manually enter data into SAP. So what you've done is you've introduced error at the end. So there's a lot of just intrinsic problems and challenges around that. And we're going to talk in a little bit on the platform approach about how you can avoid some of that pain, frankly, that happens with Excel and with spreadsheets in terms of these SAP processes. And I'm not going to go through all these because just for the interest of time, but just understand these are challenges that happen literally in every organization we deal with. Every company that makes a thing and sells a thing has these same problems. And at the same time, if you think about what it takes then to get that's all of those challenges that then go along with all of the process components to get a product to market. And if a product generally will start in product development. Product development will say, we want to create this new thing, and it's got these ingredients in it, and this is, we think, the process it needs to go through. And they'll throw that over the wall to procurement, and procurement will take it and look at it and go, okay, they'll go through source lists and go, who are the vendors we already have who provide these materials? Do we need new materials? So are we going to have to create new vendors? So we're going to have to go find new vendors. So now you've got a vendor process. You've got all the data associated with the vendors. You've got all the data associated with the materials. Now those two things are intimately linked. You've got the manufacturing operations team actually figuring out, can we make this product in the way that product development said based on the materials they've got and all of the other information we have, machines, or we have to buy new machines, things of that sort. Your logistics and warehousing group is sitting there going, okay, so what materials are we expecting and from whom? How do we store them? How are they packaged? Do they require special handling? Are they, is there going to be some kind of special, customs clearance that they need because of where we're getting them from? Production planning needs to know when all that stuff is going to be there because they need to put it into the schedule to figure out when can we actually make this product based on, again, vendor material data, your manufacturing operations having everything ready, your warehouse being ready to then ship it to the plants. So all of these things, when we talk about that interdependence of process and data, just think about what we've talked about. These are all individual processes in many areas, but it's one big process. You've got a lot of sub-processes associated with that one product and all the data that works through that entire value chain and what's happening there. So that's one of the things in automation, and being able to coordinate across this kind of complexity is one of those key areas where you can gain a lot of efficiencies. And so the last two areas in this often are controlling, is then looking at all of that stuff you've got and going, they're doing their margin analysis, figuring out how much money are we going to make, or are we going to make, and if so, how much for this product, and what can we expect. Finance is then looking at the cash flows. How much money are we going to have to spend to buy the materials, to manufacture the product, to ship the product, and then how much can we expect to come in the door. So there's a lot of complexity across that entire value chain, and it's complexity of process, it's complexity of data, and this is one of those areas where automation can really drive a lot of benefits through that entire value chain. And again, we're talking about being able to make an impact across your entire business. Excuse me. We often think of our businesses as being these siloed departments. You've got finance and accounting, you've got controlling, you've got all the groups that we talked about, plant maintenance, materials. But the reality of it is, in order to get a product out the door, data is going to work its way across all of these departments. All of them are going to be engaged. All of them are going to be involved. And being able to automate across these processes and across these departments and looking at it holistically, again, can drive huge value and huge benefits to your organization. And automation and being able to automate really through, in our case, through the SAP system, which does work across your organization, can have a lot of value for you and for your company and for your enterprise. So this really begs the question, why an automation platform? So we've talked about the complexity, and what an automation platform can give you is the ability to work across your entire company and across your entire SAP ecosystem, which essentially is what we were just talking about. And in our world, a complete automation platform looks like this. You've got data automation and you've got process automation. The data automation side of it really is for mass data management. And in SAP, you've got a lot of mass data management processes around things like pricing changes or materials changes. And one of the examples we're going to show is a materials change. And what we find is, for us, this is SAP to Excel. So the exchange of data between SAP and Excel, because there's a lot of things you can do in Excel. There was no, Excel has a lot of benefits to it when you get outside of that governance. So being able on that data automation side to use Excel as your primary interface, so you can extract data out of SAP, you can make changes you need to, you can validate that data again back about SAP, you can do some data quality checks and then repost it into SAP. It's fully governed, and now you've improved your data quality. That's one of the benefits of data automation. So it is perfect for those really, like I said, mass data processes. Excuse me. Process automation, on the other hand, is where you've got workflows involved. And in our world, that comes in two flavors. You've got Excel workflow and you've got Foreman workflow. So Excel workflow can take those data automation files and move them through a complex workflow. Really good example of this is journal entries in finance, where often our finance, at least the customers we work with, the finance department is often managing those journal entries in Excel already. So now to be able to use that Excel file without telling your accountants they've got to learn SAP, manage it through a complex and contingent workflow. So depending on the value of that journal entry, it could be, go straight into SAP. It could go through a multi-level approval process. It could be based on company code or customer code. It could be based on currency. There's any number of things that you can set up an Excel workflow system to work through. At the end of that process, again, you've got all that same data checking throughout and data management throughout. It's fully governed. And then at the end, it automatically posts to SAP as soon as that final approval is received. So there's no manual data entry at the end. You know that the data that was approved is what is going to go into SAP exactly. And the data that you've approved has been checked against SAP. So you know you've got the highest data quality possible. Foreman workflow is perfect for where you've got those complex processes that involve multiple constituents throughout your organization. Good example of this I'll just use is vendor create, where often it starts in procurement, but it also has probably your materials team, your vendor management team, all the people we talked about, warehouse, materials, and each one of those people either needs to review certain information or they need to contribute certain information. And being able in a Foreman workflow situation to send them a role-based form, which means that your finance team only sees the fields that they either need to see or contribute to, and same with your master data and same with your materials team. At the end of it all gets recompiled and final approval, again, automatically posted into SAP, and you've got all of those data checks. Plus, you can do other enhancement throughout. So you can do address validation using a third-party address validation service. You can do coordination with, say, Salesforce or another system that you've got. So there's a lot of power in Foreman workflow, and I'll show you one of the examples of a couple of examples of what Foreman workflow can do for you and for your organization. So that's what we mean when we talk about a complete automation platform. And what it really gives you is it delivers capabilities that in the context of hyper automation really can become the core of your automation strategy, if you will, for your organization, for your SAP processes. So we talked about workflow and some of the benefits you have there. We've talked about I touched on connectivity because the reality of it is most of these big SAP processes aren't just SAP. They've got other systems engaged, or there's ways to enhance data using other systems that you currently don't have. And being able to coordinate that using APIs is very important. Self-service is another really beneficial characteristic that a platform can have. And a good example of self-service might be if you've got a vendor portal. And it's something where the vendor themselves can access their SAP data and they can make changes to pricing. If you're doing a vendor create, they can enter their initial data or initial information, and it can kick off the workflow and kick off the process. So self-service can help drive a lot of benefits, and it takes out what we often see are steps internally. Data management we talked about for those mass data processes. Cloud deployment is becoming more and more important, especially as our IT organizations get squeezed and we're looking for vendors like Precisely or one of your other vendors to be able to offload a lot of that IT infrastructure and responsibility to. So being able to work with cloud deployment for automation can help a great deal just in terms of simplifying your overall environment and processes. Governance. We've got customers who literally have purchased the product or our platform purely for the governance capabilities. And if you think about in the United States, Sarbanes-Oxley or SOX audits, which are pure process audits, did you follow the business rules you have in place? So being able to use automation to enforce is the right word and not necessarily the word a lot of people like to use, but being able to enforce the business rules that you have in place for how a process should be followed is absolutely important, critical. And then being able to review that audit trail or being able to audit that process and make sure that those business rules were followed. Low-code development. So really citizen developers, getting the automation closer to the people who own the data and own the process. We've done this for going on 20 years. And being able to get that citizen developer who knows the data and knows the process to be either the actual developer of that automation or very closely related to the people developing that automation can drive greater efficiencies into it. It can give you that speed to get to the automated process more quickly. Or if you need changes done, having that citizen developer be able to make those changes can really help your organization in multiple ways. Forms we talked about, and the benefits of forms are literally myriad. And then ultimately it's about improving that initial data quality that you've got and the quality of the data you have in your SAP system and throughout your really entire systems of record. And that's where master data management comes in. And at Precisely, I'm not talking about master data management today, but we do have a master data management hub as well. So that can work across multiple systems of record. But even the master data you have within your SAP system, improving and increasing the quality and integrity of that data, again, absolutely critical to the success of your organization. And now let's talk about automation and digital transformation, because like I said earlier, we've spent a lot of time over the past several decades on digital transformation. And in many cases, that has just gotten us to the point of digitizing our data, getting rid of paper, getting rid of manual data entry in some cases, or getting rid of manual data transcription. So you receive an invoice, and now we've transformed that process. So something like Abby comes in and does your intelligent document processing and extracts the data from it. So we've changed unstructured data into structured data. So we're doing a really good job with that. But automation, we believe, is kind of that next step in the evolution of your data transformation efforts. And we're going to talk about examples of 3 different ways we've done this and 3 things we see when we talk to customers about it. One is, how do you align your organization for automation, and what does that actually look like? How does getting automation into your organization change the way people think? And a couple of our examples that we're going to show really have that organizational alignment in mind for how automation changed them. Getting started is another big question we often get. It's sort of, where do I start my automation journey? And how do I identify the right place to start? And then process re-engineering. So these complex data intensive end-to-end processes, it's often not just about the process. It's about the process and the people and the technology and your business outcomes, and literally reinventing that process or re-engineering that process from end to end. And we've got a great example of that I'll walk through. I keep hitting the wrong button. So aligning your organization. One of the things that automation often does is people hear we're going to be automating a process and they get concerned. Oh my God, my job is going to go away. Well, no. Again, people are looking to optimize their staffs. They're looking for ways to give people time back and make their current people more efficient and more effective and more productive without, frankly, killing them from, work more overtime, work longer hours, don't go on vacation. So getting the organization aligned around how automation can help give you benefits really can be extremely helpful. So there's some considerations that we see when we work with customers on how do you really adapt your organization for automation. Organizational structure can be very important. How does the organization look, and how does it align to what it is you want to automate? And if you're automating into an existing structure, it often can be, how do we align the automation to that structure in a way that is non-disruptive, but still drives efficiencies through it? You're looking to optimize people's times, and you want to eliminate a lot of that tedious manual data entry and those manual data processes, whether it's review and approval with a piece of paper or anything like that. We find that giving people time back to do value-added work is immensely beneficial to your organization in terms of just the employee satisfaction, customer satisfaction, things of that nature. Governance and visibility is absolutely critical too, because if you're doing ungoverned processes, often people aren't really sure how things should be done. So organizing and making sure they're done in a governed manner, but giving visibility into that. Where are things in the process? Who's the next person that needs to review it? Is something stuck? And where is it stuck? And that helps come down to stakeholder satisfaction as well. Yeah, and again, the example that we're going to walk through, I think, will help show how applying automation can make people more happy. And ultimately, you're talking about speed and efficiency for your people, for your organization. So the customer case study we're going to talk about is an insurance company. And this is an insurance company that is based in Europe. And they had a paper-based system, highly paper-based, highly manual system for processing customer refunds. And the way this system worked was an agent in the field would fill out a manual form, a paper-based form in pen, and physically mail it into a shared service center. So now you're talking about international mailing, and you're talking about paper-based processes, and you're talking about trying to interpret handwriting once it gets to the shared service center. There was no established workflow process. Once that paper-based or once that form was received, whoever got it first started the process. And it was literally Post-it notes and paper clips and signatures on a piece of paper. So there was zero visibility. Your customer experience was awful because the agents in the field generally had no idea. It kind of went into the void, and eventually their customer would get a check. The customers waiting on a refund could call their agent, but it could be days before their agent found out what the status was. And then at the end of this entire process, once it went through this manual review and approval within the shared service center, it went to a data entry team. If there was a problem on the form at that point, which you'd hope there wasn't, but there often was, the data entry team would send it back to the agent, and the whole process would start all over again. So it was a bit of a nightmare. And the result was, obviously, you had really unhappy people. You often had double payments or complete non-payments because it would get lost in the process. And what they were able to adopt then was look at a form-based system. So now online, the agent fills out a form, simple, basic. It's got things like drop-down menus. It's got prompts. It helps them understand what needs to go where and when and how. And it's completely, governed in the way in, but it's also very simplified. So what they were able to do was then track it internally. They knew what was happening. Once they hit submit, they could then see what the status was on everything. And from a routing standpoint for the review and approval, it was a standard process. So there were so many benefits to adopting this. And so some of the things they saw was they were able to reassign a couple of their full-time employees within the shared service center because they simply didn't need them anymore to be doing data entry. And this was a very busy shared service center that did a lot of different things. So that gave them time back to do other things. They increased their capacity. I think they figured they more than doubled their ability to process refunds within a given period of time. And I want to say their SLA on a refund became 2 weeks. They significantly reduced their cost. And not only on just time and efficiency and moving those two people off the project, but think about what it costs to mail those forms every time they needed to do that, and paper and envelopes and everything else. So significantly reduced cost, all by adopting a very simple form-based review and approval process. Their customer satisfaction went up, and this was actually one of their core things they were looking at, was making, helping their agents be much happier, frankly, and much more satisfied with this process. There was no longer angst. Oh my God, I've got to fill out a customer refund and I have no idea where it goes and what's going to happen to it. Now they could see that entire process. And ultimately, their people expecting refunds were much happier, because if they had a question, their agent could answer it immediately. So it really helped. They also had a sustainability initiative. So think about the amount of paper that they were able to cut down on, and their carbon footprint went down because they no longer had shipping they were worrying with, and mailing costs and everything else. And then they reduced their business risk because they eliminated those double payments and non-payments and losing customers because of customer dissatisfaction. So just by adopting a form for that one single process really substantially gave them benefits across their entire business. So that's an example of what a form can do for you. And organizationally, let me go back to that real quickly. Organizationally, what that meant for them. So they were looking for improving customer satisfaction on multiple levels, stakeholder satisfaction. They were looking at streamlining their process. So all the way through that, organizationally, it was really, really beneficial to them and to the company and to their customers. So one of the other questions we often get is around getting started. Where do I start? What do I do? And this is a good example of somebody just really understanding to do it the traditional way was going to be expensive and time consuming, and automation could help them significantly. So when we talk to companies about where to start, it's often identifying opportunities for quick implementation. If you think about that hyper automation model, it's automating as many things as you can, as quickly as you can across your organization, but you've got to start somewhere. And being able to get a quick win, so a small but high impact limited scope process or project can often really show the benefits of automation to your organization. You want it to be something that is measurable and that you're really looking at what is that focus data process. And we often tell people, look, don't bite off more than you can chew. Don't try and start your automation journey with some giant process that can take way too long, can cost way too much, until you show what is the value of automation in smaller parts of your organization. And again, this is where a platform approach can help, because if you adopt the platform and then start small, you can grow into it and you can grow across your organization. And this is a good example of a company that did that. So Dorman is a supplier to the automotive industry. They do both OEM and aftermarket work. And they had what on the surface of it seems like a fairly simple challenge. They needed to change the designation on a number of their materials from being listed as manufactured to being listed as kitted. And this was going to affect things like bills of materials and routings and sales orders, all kinds of just stuff throughout that entire process. And if you know anything about changing materials in SAP, it is not as simple as it seems on the surface. This simple change affected a lot of things and required a lot of work within each individual material record. And when Dorman went and did the analysis, they figured that per 100 materials, how much do they have? Thousands of these things, but per 100 materials, it was going to take about 60 hours to make those changes, and it was going to cost them about $4,500. So they're going to have to go out, they're going to have to hire temporary staff, or they're going to have to add people just to change 100 materials. Then they found automation, and what they discovered was that for those same 100 materials, they could do it in about 5 hours. It would cost them about $375, and they could do it with the exact same people they currently had. No need to add staff. So they could optimize for their current team. They had minimal business impact, and ultimately it also improved their data quality. So in the first quarter that they implemented this automation solution, they figure they saved almost $125,000. And so that's $500,000 a year just for that one process. And now ask yourself within your organization, how many of those one processes do you have? Because very quickly it adds up. It's $500,000 on this one. You could have 5 of these. And suddenly you're talking millions of dollars of benefit that you have across your organization because you've adopted the platform and now can apply this automation solution or this type of data automation solution in multiple places in your organization. So think about what the impact of that is. And it's, like I said, it's a single, seemingly simple process. And I know materials in SAP is highly complicated and there's a lot of things that need to change, but it does matter significantly for what automation can do for you across your organization. And then finally, process reengineering. If you think about the processes we have and what I walked through earlier, if you are trying to do complex processes in a spreadsheet-based system, it can be extremely difficult to scale. And the example we're going to show you is going to talk about that. But if you're looking to do a bigger process, so this is where you've started small and now you're going to grow, you want to really focus on those business outcomes. What are we trying to achieve with this? And often your measurement may not necessarily be the cost. It may be something bigger that you've got to deal with. And it may be a number of challenges you're trying to address at once. You want to re-engineer that entire process for automation. You want to drive organizational change too, because realize when you make that kind of a change, it's going to change the way a lot of people do their jobs and a lot of the way they work through this process. And these end-to-end processes are really good for this kind of an approach. So looking at process reengineering, often it is these larger end-to-end processes we're going to talk about. So in this case, it's an energy drinks company, and it's one I'm sure you're all probably familiar with. I will not say their name. They've asked us not to. But they went through a major transformation. So they had a product-based system. They were regionally based, and their entire system was based on Excel workbooks. So imagine, if you will, every one of their product managers basically owned a product and owned a workbook. And within that workbook, you had worksheets, and individuals in various parts of the organization might own a worksheet, or they might own a column within a worksheet, or they might even own a cell within a column within a worksheet. So for them, it worked. It was massively complex, highly manual. They described it in 2 ways. They called it organized chaos and spreadsheet hell. But again, it worked. I mean, this company grew and they were very successful. But then they did a global distribution deal with one of the largest soft drinks manufacturers in the world. And now you're talking about a completely new supply chain. You're talking about a lot of struggles that we'll talk about in a few minutes. And this spreadsheet-based system simply failed. It could not scale. It could not adapt to what needed to be done to meet the obligations they had in this distribution deal. It became the bottleneck that they couldn't get out of. So they came to us. They were already using our platform for, I think, some of their finance activities, but recognized that we had other capabilities we could work on them with. So we sat down and we did a series of process workshops. And we looked at the process and the sub-processes within that process to get a product to the market. We looked at the technologies available, what they were already using, what we had available, what other ones might be needed, the people that were engaged throughout that, and ultimately, obviously, the data that was underneath all of it. So what is the data we're moving through this process and actually managing to get that product out the door that you're reliant on? And as part of that process, one of the things we realized was that every time they create a new beverage or a new product, it's a new product launch type for them. And there are multiple product launch types that we're dealing with. So new products are actually the simplest one in this. You've either got a completely new innovation, so new recipe, we're going to start from scratch, we're going to build it. Line extensions, so think cherry Coca-Cola. Most of it's the same, you're adding a flavor. Where the complexity came in for them when they did this global deal was on product changes and geographical expansion. So on the product change side, you've got ingredient and label changes. Now, think about what happens from a labeling standpoint when you get into international markets. You've got different requirements, so your legal and regulatory environment changes. You have different ingredient requirements. Energy drinks company, There are certain ingredients that you can only have up to a certain level of in certain countries and certain regions, and in some cases you can't have them at all. Seasonal and promotional products. This is again, energy drinks companies. These people live on seasonal and promotional products. They love their promotions. And then lots of others. So you had that complexity, and then you had the geographical expansion aspect of it, where you've got new plants, you've got a completely new supply chain, you've got new sales organization, you've got new customer organization, you've got all that complexity downstream. And so now what you're talking about is, let's look at what we can start with. And we started with 3 simple projects, 3 areas that they identified. One was point of sale materials. Again, energy drinks company. Point of sale materials, merchandise are a significant part of the revenue stream. Licensed merchandise, licensing, all that kind of stuff. Raw materials, whole new supply chain. Now you've got new suppliers, you've got different naming, different types, different measurements, all kinds of things that they hadn't had to consider before. And then overall, it was just the production process itself, which they had known from the beginning they needed to digitize in a much different way and apply process automation to it. So what were we able to deliver for them? Well, now they can start from a single landing page. We completely eliminated that Excel-based system. And for the point of sale materials, they can go into that landing page and they can say, I need a new point of sale material, or I'm going to extend it. Same thing with raw materials. I've got this new material, or I've got this new vendor sending this new material, or I can extend it to different plants, and then the actual production process itself. So this is now a completely online form-based system for them. It is centralized. It is completely governed. It has visibility throughout. So they've completely eliminated and driven the Excel-based manual system. So what this really meant for them was, you think about it, this is not just re-engineering the process for automation and form-based automation, but this was organizational change as well. And going through that workshop process, we were able to figure out, where do we start on this bigger process? So we started in these 3 areas. And what did they see ultimately when they went through that? Well, they reduced their cycle times by between 50 and 75%. Essentially, they cut their time to market in half. And this is a highly competitive marketplace. So this gives them a competitive advantage to be able to cut their cycle times. Now, what would this mean for your organization? To think about what it would mean for you to be able to get to market in half the time you were able to get to before. It gave them visibility. They never had visibility with that spreadsheet before. They had no idea where things were and when they were happening and what was going on. Now they do. Now they can look into it and see if they've got a bottleneck, if something's not happening, if they need to check on status of things, they can do that all online. It's fully governed. Again, spreadsheet-based processes generally are not governed, or if they are not governed well. Now this is fully governed. And all of the sub-processes of the big processes are governed as well. And because they have visibility and governance, and they have repeatability. They're not starting from a blank workbook every time they want to start a new product. They can repeat very quickly, and that's part of what reduced their cycle times. So a huge amount of benefit to going through and re-engineering that process and applying a form-based system to it all the way across. So hopefully that's given you a better idea of the kinds of things you can look to see with automation. So companies are really needing to be able to improve data integrity, improve speed, and improve agility. And we're seeing that it's a way that automation can help drive, benefits in those areas, on those areas of need. We also want to be able to optimize our workforces and, get that tangible ROI, which we've just been able to demonstrate, and ultimately get to that digital transformation dream. And again, I'm not going to go through all of these, but I think just realize that automation today can show you and deliver significant benefits across your organization. And if you were looking to find ways to improve your SAP processes and improve your overall business performance, I think automation is a great way to go. And starting with a platform approach to automation, where you've got one thing that's going to start in the middle and it's going to live, that can work across your entire organization, is a really, really strong way to adapt and adopt to what's happening in the marketplace. Hopefully that has helped you. And finally, I'm just going to leave you with this one thought. And this is a quote from Justin Trudeau, and he said it a number of years ago. But it remains as true today as it was when he said it. And that is, the pace of change has never been this fast, but it will never be this slow again. Don't think too hard on that because it's terrifying. But it also really, I think, captures what we're all dealing with today. And he said this before the pandemic, but it's never been more true, because we do all feel like everything's changing very quickly. And it's not just disruption, it's just simply the pace of business is getting faster and faster and faster. And the thought that it's never going to be this slow again is almost terrifying. But it's one of those areas where we very firmly at Precisely believe that automation is a way to get a handle on and manage that pace of change and be able to not kill your organization and kill your people while trying to keep up with it. Because automation implemented properly and managed and governed properly really can help you adapt to that and adapt to that pace of change. We saw it with the energy drinks company. We've seen it with other customers. We understand that this need to be able to get to market faster is absolutely critical. So just keep that in mind. The pace of change has never been this fast, but it will never be this slow again. Automation can help you adapt to that and keep up with it. Really quickly, for those of you who are SAP users and are going, who is Precisely? This all sounds somewhat familiar. You may very well be familiar with Windshuttle. We were acquired by Precisely in 2021. So all of the things you know about Windshuttle and all the benefits we have, and the fact that we have been automating SAP processes for 20 years, is now just part of the world's leader in data integrity. And that's what Precisely really is focused on, is data integrity. And if you think about data integrity, it's really the ability to deliver accurate, consistent, and contextualized data to help you make confident business decisions. And automation is one of those ways to contribute to that data quality and that data integrity that you need across your organization. We do have about 12,000 customers worldwide in over 100 countries. 99 of those 12,000 customers are in the Fortune 100. And we've got about 2,500 employees. And many of the largest brands in the world trust us with their data. And many of these trust us to automate their SAP processes. And hopefully after seeing this, you will have a better sense of how we can help you. Now, in addition to that, we have partnerships with many of the leading technology providers. So we can work within your IT organization as well and work across that, not only in the SAP automation space, but as well for data quality, data integrity, and the ways that we can help you improve your overall just data or ability to make decisions based on data in your organization. And finally, with that, I want to thank you all. I very much appreciate that you are here, and I'm going to turn it back over to Cody for any questions that we may have had.
Perfect. So that's the magic word. If you have any questions, go ahead and send them in. Up to this point, we've gotten a couple. So Andrew, let's go ahead and start taking them from the top.
Sure.
So this is kind of it's two questions that I'm going to combine into one. But are there available any visual features that require no coding expertise, so even non-technical workers can complete standard development tasks so our business can become more agile? And kind of a follow-up to that was, are there any low-code or no-code tools to help with this, and specifically anything that's drag and drop simplicity?
Yes. So within, and I can only speak to our platform, within the products that we have. So our platform really consists of two products. It consists of Evolve, which is our workflow process automation platform, and then Studio, which is our data management, and it's an integrated part of Evolve as well. Both of those have low-code, no-code development capabilities within them. Studio, most of our Studio customers, and so Dorman is a great example, are managed and run by people within the business. So it's often either it's an SAP super user within, say, a finance organization or a master data team, or even sometimes it'll be the SAP functional team that will be doing that. So it's those teams that are close to the organization. On the process automation side, our workflow engine does have drag and drop development capabilities. So we see a lot of teams doing that. Some of our largest customers have large Windshuttle teams, or now Precisely teams, that actually are just dedicated to developing those things for their broader organization. But they tend to be people who are very close to the business and to the actual data and to those processes. So yes, yes, those things are available.
Awesome. Approximately, what's the percentage of, how many percentage of digital transformation is achieved by SAP implementation in a manufacturing organization? Sorry.
I'm trying to figure out what that. So I think if you're asking the question of kind of what level of digital transformation do you get to by just implementing SAP, SAP gets you 60% of the way there in and of itself. So an SAP ERP system, if you implement it, they're phenomenal systems, but they're massively complex. If you look at the way that the data is often created and managed around those SAP processes, very often it's done outside of SAP. And this is where the spreadsheets come in. And this is why we see so many companies using spreadsheets, because it can be very tedious. And again, look at Dormant, 60 hours to manage to change 100 materials manually. That was within the SAP GUI. And then being able to do that in 5 using effectively Excel as your front end. So you get a lot of benefits when you're able to essentially keep your SAP core clean and manage that data outside of it, but manage it in a governed, automated, and efficient manner, I guess you can say. So that's where I would start. I think SAP is that core. It is the thing you're going to run your business on. But the question really is not so much what can SAP do, because we know what SAP can do. It's how do you help make SAP more efficient with those processes around the data associated with SAP. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, I think that sounded like a pretty solid answer. And I interpreted the question the same way. So I think we nailed that one. Of course, if we didn't, please do clarify and let us know.
Yeah,
we'd love to answer your
clarify,
question.
let us know.
So this next question is diving a little bit more into the future and emerging technology, but can AI functionality be involved in supporting intelligent document processing and other capabilities to boost efficiency and agility of business processes?
So I don't know a lot about intelligent document processing. Because that tends to be kind of ancillary and get data from being unstructured to structured. I do believe it can in that area. I know within SAP processes, we're looking at machine learning for enhancing and again, driving greater efficiency into some of these complex processes. So if it can learn the process, it can do a number of things. It can help reduce and simplify your business rules. It can help do, suggestions for autofilling various fields and help eliminate some of the steps that way. So I think there are benefits to it. I think we're really early days on it, but on the intelligent document processing, I don't know enough about it. It's not an area we work directly in. But what I do know about it, I think it probably will help.
Well, Andrew, it looks like we have exhausted our questions, but we do still have about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes here. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to give our audience any kind of parting words or closing thoughts before we do take this off the air.
Sure, thanks. Hopefully, again, I really hope this has helped you get a better sense for how automation can be applied to these complex data-intensive processes. If you're looking for more information, you can go to precisely.com and go into the solutions section and look under SAP and SAP automation. We do have more information there. We've got white papers, case studies, other examples of customers and companies that we've helped, and some examples of that, as well as demonstrations of the product and so forth. But I think 2 things. One, go back to the quote about, the pace of change has never been this fast, but it will never be this slow again. Just think of automation as a way to get a handle on that and look at it as a technology and as a capability that can really help your organization thrive in a time of great disruption. And hopefully you've learned a little bit more about that today, and hopefully you've learned a little bit more about us today. So I appreciate that you are here. Thank you very much. I know everybody's time is valuable. And again, Cody, thanks for having me.
Yep, happy to have you with us, Andrew. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate not only your expertise, but your point of view and everything that goes into putting together these presentations. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yep.
So I'd like to remind our audience that the session was recorded. So should you want to rewatch, you will be receiving a link to the on-demand version via email, but you can also find it living on the DevOps website at devops.com/webinars, and be sure to look in the on-demand section. I'll also quickly remind you that the slides are in the handout section if you'd like to grab those before we close out. The 4 winners of our $25 Amazon gift card drawing are Neil G., Farouk V., Katie S., and Rolando C. So to our 4 winners, keep an eye on your inbox to claim that gift card. If you don't happen to see that email in about the next 48 hours, check your spam. Check your spam just in case it gets filtered out. I'd like to thank Precisely for being our sponsor for our program today. And to our audience, thank you so much for joining us for this past hour. We really value your time and we want to hear your feedback. So as soon as we close out, there will be a survey that pops up. Let us know what your thoughts were on today's program, or perhaps what you'd like to see on a future program. Either way, we do hope to see everyone at an upcoming Techstrong learning experience. Have a great rest of your day. And Andrew, thank you once more.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.